Hi, thanks for looking in. I'm just going to put this little video out showing how I reseated a chair with cane. I've got a DIY starter kit from an online supplier and set about putting this chair right. You'll see that I'm not particularly clued up in terms of how to do reseating of chairs, so I did quite a lot of research as well as reading the instruction booklet. Here I am watching other people's YouTube videos. There's quite a few really good instructional videos out there. So, hope you find this instructional. Cheers. Right, let's get it done. So this is how the cane has been sent. This is the thin stuff that's used for the bulk of the weaving. So it's in these strands, and basically all I've done is I've pulled one of the strands out from this bundle here. I'm just going to coil it up and soak it in this water, this tepid water, for about 10 minutes they recommend. No longer than that, otherwise apparently it turns a grey colour. So that's all I'm going to do, maybe put a couple of strands in there. Meanwhile I'll just unpick what has previously been done to this old chair. Basically I picked up this old chair a little while ago and it's been knocking around the shed for a little while. Somebody's obviously had a first go at doing this. There's some old golf tees in here holding some strips of cane in there. So I'm going to undo that and take it from there. So I've got my soaked cane, and there's a shiny side on the top and a slightly buff side below, so the shiny side stays on the top. I've marked the centres, so that's the centre at the back and the centre at the front. These are the two centre pegs. What I'm going to do, I'm going to start there and then start the weaving. So I've got this hank of cane, it's quite damp, and from what I've picked up, you put the cane into the back and leave it dangling by about 3 inches. Put your little golf tee thing back in, then bring it across here to the corresponding hole over there and thread your cane through, keeping it nice and flat with the shiny side up. And you apparently don't want to have it too tight, so I'm just going to pop that back in there just to hold it, so that's not too tight. And then we need to come back up here. I'm going to try and make sure that the cane is flat underneath against the wood of the seat rail. Find the beginning again. Yeah. There we are. It's going to come up through here. There we go. Get it out of the way a bit. Right, now as it comes underneath here, I'm going to try and keep it as flat as I can. It's going to go down through there. I'm just going to make sure that it's still the shiny side up, and then so it goes. back up to the adjacent hole. And down through this hole here at the front. I'll continue doing this all the way across here, and then there's a different sort of arrangement for this edge piece, so we'll get to that in a moment. So I've just got to the end of the first strand. There's a bit left on here, and it does actually reach all the way across there, but by the time I put it through here, underneath here and then across, I think there'll be too short a bit left, because eventually these long bits at the bottom underneath, you've got to actually tie those long bits off. Right, so if you leave too short a bit there, you can't get the knot formed. That's kind of the way I'm taking it anyway. So at this point, I'm just going to abandon this. This is one strand, and that's as far as I'm going to go with it. I'll start the next one just to finish this corner detail off. Now then, what you've got to do now is find the appropriate peg on the side here that works. So I think, based on what I can see, it's maybe either this one or this one. I'm inclined to go for this one here. So move that into there. Tension. Where was I going to go? Into that one. These little holes in the chair are quite small. So what I think I'm trying to describe here is completing the first half, if you like, of the vertical settings, and I've reached the corner, and as you can see, the last two lengths of cane there are running parallel to the other lengths of cane, but I've put them in the appropriate holes down that slanted side rail to keep them parallel. You'll notice as well where I've got my little finger there, I'm just pointing out the corner holes, which at this stage need to be left clear or blank. So I've got the right hand side done, which you can see there. That's all finished. Now I've just got to repeat that process over on the left hand side. So that's the end of stage one now, as far as I know. I've got all the canes coming across, and just to note, because you're moistening the cane when you're putting it in, and maybe because the fire's on as well, but as it dries it does tighten up a little bit more. I'm just noticing that. So this is a bit looser over here, but as it dries it does tighten up. So in stage two, it's a case of making the horizontal pattern. So you start off in the top corner there, and then you run the cane from side rail to side rail, coming up in the hole adjacent to the one that you've just gone down, and keeping the tension on there with these little golf tees. So you don't go into the very furthest corner holes. Again, you're leaving those corner holes mainly, I think, for the diagonal canes which come later. So it's a case of then threading the cane through and going all the way across and continuing right the way down to the very front of the seat. So I'm just about to start stage 3, which is to basically copy the back to front caning here, but making sure that, as it says in this little instruction book, that you keep the cane, you've got to lay the cane to the left of each of these, shall we call them, verticals. So I've got to run the cane backwards and forwards, starting from the middle again, and keep everything to the left of these verticals. So again, I continued with the vertical weaving, starting in the middle and moving across to the right, but making sure that when I threaded the cane into the little hole, that I was always threading it in to the left hand side of the pre-existing vertical cane, and just continued doing that all the way across to the right hand side, and then repeating the pattern all the way across to the left hand side until I got the second vertical cane stage completed. Okay, here we are, back to it. It's day 2. What I've done is I've just put this damp towel over the top of the cane just to sort of moisten it up a little bit, soften it a bit. The next stage, which is to do the weaving, I think it's stage 4, so basically that's when the weaving starts. You go over, under, going across horizontally from back to front. So that's the next job, so I'll make a start with that and show you how that progresses. So I'm starting at the back corner here with some wetted cane. Again, I've found the shiny side, and I'm going to go under step 1 and over step 3. So under step 1, over step 3, and we're keeping up to the top of the horizontal. So that's the general idea. Pretty super hard to do. Boy oh boy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull enough through to get through to that far end. Right. Okay, so I'll persevere with that and bring you back. So I'm still on with stage 4, and I've made a bit of progress. I've got 2 horizontal lines in, that one and that one, and they go adjacent to the south side of the, I think that would be stage 2, that line there. So what I'm doing is I'm going over stage 3, that's the one there, that was the last vertical one that I put in, and then under stage 1, that's the ones below, so that you kind of weave them into a tight network. And when I get to the very end here, I put the cane down the hole and then back up the adjacent one and just carry on weaving across again on the south side of the horizontal. That's stage 2 piece of cane all the way back. Right, so I'll keep going. I'm keeping the cane dry with this damp with this cloth, and just get right the way down to the bottom. So just to make that horizontal weave a little bit clearer, I've really pulled the camera in to do this close-up so that it shows you how you do this kind of up and down weave across the, well, horizontally across the chair frame. So I hope that clarifies things a little bit. It is very fiddly, as you can see. I'm kind of struggling to get a technique. Sometimes it's possible to just pull the cane through and then loop it back under rather than feeding it through by the end there, but you do begin to perfect a technique of your own. Anyway, there we go. So I've perfected a bit of a technique here. What I do is I bring it through about maybe 3 or 4 of these square cells and then pull it through. Try and keep it in line. Right. And just to prove to anyone out there who doubted whether I was doing this for myself, here I am actually midway through one of these really fiddly weaving sections. Anyway, good time to spend an hour or two while it's raining outside. Come on, last lap now, just another 2 rows. Come on, come on, keep your concentration going. So here we are, back to it again. Yesterday I finished off all of the horizontals and all of the verticals. So that's stage 1 to 4 completed. And now I'm just on with stage 5, which is the diagonal course. So I've been looking at the instruction booklet and the general gist of it is that in my case anyway, I'm starting at this right hand corner and I'm going to go down to the bottom, going in that direction down to the bottom left. So I've got the cane pegged in this corner here, and from what I understand you go underneath the vertical lines here and then over the horizontal, so it's under, over, under, over, under, over, all the way down, and that then is your diagonal patterning. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to work from this line back in that direction. So I'm still on with this first lot of diagonals, and what I'm doing is I'm just tightening up these little squares so that they become a bit more defined, but you can see the pattern emerging now. So here's where I'm up to. I've just finished stage 5, which is to do the first diagonal which goes across in this direction. So I started off with the first one going across here, and then I worked over to this corner and then progressed down to that side. So that's stage 5, so that's going across that way. And with stage 5 you go, well, the way I've done it anyway, I've gone across the horizontals and underneath the verticals. So let's just focus in on that. So that's what it kind of looks like. I've gone across the horizontals, underneath the verticals. Now I've just started stage 6, which is the second diagonal, and I've started up in the top left hand corner this time. Let's just open up things again. Right, so I've started over here and I'm working across in that direction, and hopefully we'll end up over in the corner there somewhere. And from what I understand with this one, in this instance you go underneath the horizontal and go across the vertical, so it's opposite to the way that you've just done the previous one, and that way you form these little polygons. So what I'll do is I'll do the first one, get that established, and then come across in this direction and do the thing in 2 halves again. The only thing that I've got to consider now is some of these holes are getting quite tight. I mean, there's one there that's got 1, 2, 3, 4, got 5 bits of cane going down it, so they're getting a bit tight, some of these holes. But fingers crossed, we'll see if we can get it done. So I just thought I ought to point this out. I've just come across and finished my first horizontal in that far corner there, and I've just tucked it under where this little golf tee is, brought it back up, and I'm starting the course back in this direction. So I'll just show you some of the detail there. So it's a little bit untidy in this corner, as you can see. I've kind of like done a bit of a non-standard pattern there. But essentially what I've done is I've come back up through that hole, which is this little piece of cane here, and then I've gone over the top and I've gone underneath the first horizontal there, so that's the cane coming out, over the top of the vertical, under the horizontal, over the vertical, and I'm continuing in this direction. So I seem to have picked up the pattern alright, and I've got like a little cross going to form down there, which is I think what we're aiming for. So that's the way that it's progressing. Trying not to kink this cane too much and break the strand. It's at this point that you've got to make sure that you're not twisted, otherwise you have to undo everything. So that's the weaving finished as far as it goes. I've got all the loose ends underneath still to tie off, so there's quite a lot of little bits of string under cane underneath here. What I've got to decide now is, do I put a beading cane around the edge, or do I just put little stoppers in each of these holes? So the decision here now is, what's the evidence from the chair that I've got here? If you look along this edge, you'll see a little line there, and although this area is quite flat, that line suggests to me that maybe there's been some beading cane at one time. So I'm going to give it a go. So the next and final stage is to do this bit of beading cane. So just while the cane is soaking in water, I'm just making sure that all of these little holes are opened up, because some of them have got quite congested with all of these canes going into them. And I just need to put one last little setting cane into each of these holes to hold the beading on. So I'm just making sure. Here's one, for instance, that's quite tight. Just easing it open. So I've just cut a length of beading cane, and I've inserted it into the corner here, and just started with coming up through the first hole and going back down it with some of stage 1 setting cane. So I'll just continue all the way along here until I get near to the end, and then I'll tuck that end down into yonder. So that's how I'm going to go about that. Just zoom in, so you can see there I've gone down into the corner. I'm starting to go over the top of it and I'm going to go at each hole. I know in some cases you can do every 4 holes, but I've decided to do every one. I'm just holding the tension underneath the chair with this middle finger and then using my thumb to bed this beading cane down and then pulling this one through. So that's about it. I've finished with all the beading round all 4 sides and it's gone in quite nicely. As the chair's sort of drying off, the top is really getting quite tight now, so overall I'm really happy with that. I've been provided with this, I suppose it's some sort of bamboo, but it's intended to go into these corners just to fill up any holes. But as it turns out, the holes in here are too small to fit this stuff in, so I'm not going to be using that. Finally, I've just got to tie off some of these loose ends, like I've done on these 3 sides, and then that'll be it. Another chair brought back into use. Okay, just to finish off then, tying up these tail ends here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure that they're all nice and wet, so that they don't crack when I try and tie a knot in them. This is where you might need a brad awl. Okay, so this is how I go about it. Just lift and loop. So you're looping, first of all you're going towards the inside of the chair, loop round, bring that back, pull the material through. Alright, this one might be a bit more difficult, there's a big knot there to go through. Let's see if we can just focus in a little bit. Right, I'm just making a bit of a gap under there, loop it through, push it back through underneath there, pull it through nice and tight, hold your finger on the knot and pull the loop inwards. It's best to have the if possible, have all the knots pointed inwards so that you don't catch your finger on anything outside here. Well, thanks for joining me on this little DIY project. It's been very worthwhile doing. If you find a chair that's obviously got lots of little holes around it and you wonder what to do, this is the kind of seating that you need to consider trying. It's a little bit tricky at times, but once you get the hang of the pattern, it seems to work out quite well. So, if you've got any questions or comments, please leave them in the space below and I'll do my best to answer them. If you have enjoyed or got some value out of the video, please give it a thumbs up, and as usual, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. It doesn't cost anything and it does help the channel in the future. Thanks very much. Cheers.